I'm here today to once again make us afraid of our phones and the technology that we surround ourselves with. In my last two speeches, I first gave us insight about technology and human relationships in this given point in time. I looked at our phones, our Amazon Alexas, our Google Homes, and every other form of artificial intelligence that is slowly creeping into our lives. And then I looked at a chronological timeline of different examples of technology and their exponential growth over, particularly in the last 70 years. And I touched on Moore's Law and how it was a thing back in 1950 and how it is still a very, very real thing today. So once again, I'm here today to cement the idea that artificial intelligence is on the rise, it poses a real threat, and must be addressed. So what is our current perception of AI at this time? Well, when I ask around, the two words I get most often are cool and fun. It's a cool topic, and it's fun to talk about. So most do not associate AI with danger, fear, or other negative implications. Most are yet to even consider it a potential threat. But what do we consider threats currently? Well, there's global famine, global pandemic like the one we're in right now. There's political corruption, war, climate change, overpopulation. And we view these as threats because either they're happening or have happened in our lives, or they happen throughout history and we compare it to the time that we're in right now, because usually history will repeat itself. And so we're wary about things that have already happened. And so what makes this topic so unique is just that, how unique it is to our generation currently. It's a new idea that we have not seen before. And we have to understand and accept that machines can be smarter than us, and in many cases already are. I've talked about that in the last two speeches. I've shown us examples. And once they reach a point, they'll inevitably start improving themselves. And so the analogy I like to use here is the human relationship that we have with small insects, flies in particular. And in a lot of cases, we'll go out of our way to actually make sure that flies maintain their standard of living and send them off in a productive way where they're going to live out their prosperous lives in whatever form they can. But if there's a conflict between us, we are so quick as humans to completely annihilate 1, 2, 3, or large groups with no remorse at all. And so if you apply it in kind of this discussion of divergence away from an incredibly competent superintelligence, you can translate it in a very similar way. Because if a conflict arises from the superintelligence goal and humans, we don't know how that conflict would play out. And so I'd imagine in the audience tonight, there's some deniers and skeptics out there. I've met a few. I've talked to them. I know what they're going to say. And so, but in order to stay a skeptic, you have to deny one of these three claims I'm about to make. First, intelligence is the product of information processing. We've known that for a long time. Brain scans, brain imaging, brain chemistry, it all shows us the same thing. Next, we will continue to rapidly improve our technology. We have, and I really touched on it in the last 70 years throughout the last speeches. For example, the patents I brought up in my last speech, 1995, there was 5 million patents, 2015, 10 million, 5 years later, 2020, now there's 15 million. And even with artificial intelligence, in 1997, Deep Blue, that was IBM's Deep Blue, it beat the world chess champion. AlphaGo recently just beat the world Go champion. And I touched on Google's DeepMind and how that's a very real thing happening right now and has administrative access to their servers. But the biggest one out of all these three, that's hard to deny, is that we are not near the peak of possible intelligence. And let me elaborate further. The best way to frame this is with showing us a graph. And if we can think about human intelligence on this graph, I want to stop at this y-axis intersection right there. That is the peak of human intellect, and we can't go further as humans. And so if we want to extrapolate that out, we'll call this a fish or a chicken or anything like that, just to really get it away from human intelligence. But how the graph really looks is something a little bit more in line with this. An exponential rise after we pass that threshold that we can't comprehend with human intellect, machinery and technology was going to do that for us. So, but what if we nail this on our first try? What if our first try is perfect? Will everything be all good? Are we just going to live a prosperous life as a society? Probably not. There's a lot of things that would come up, rear its head in a very negative way. First of all, an economic collapse. As automated technology takes over large swaths of global jobs, wealth inequality will rise. There's a real possibility that poverty will kind of reign supreme, not only in America, but around the world. And what's going to happen to our political and governmental structures right now? Is there going to be a need for organized government or sanctioned borders even with this automation that we're seeing right now? And if those two fall, society will as well. It can tear apart the social fabric that we cherish right now very quickly. And so, wrapping this all up, what can we do moving forward? It's a scary topic. I know I've been scaring you guys over this last 3 speeches, but there are things that we can do. It's kind of a hard topic or a hard discussion to have. So there's the idea of merging AI with the human brain, and it sounds a little far-fetched, it sounds kind of science fiction, but it's a real thing happening right now in a very minor way, but it's true. So Elon Musk, I talked about him in the last 2 speeches. His new project right now is a device called Neuralink, and in a sense, it's a small incision in the brain, and there'd be a little device put in, and microscopic wires would go through the brains and send pulses or counter pulses when necessary in order to either decrease or increase the neurons firing in your brain. Why I find that so interesting, personally, my personal testimony being I have epilepsy, so my back right occipital lobe, the neurons will fire when they're not supposed to. And if I think of a technology that can be put in the brain to send counterpulses to completely eliminate that, incredibly fascinating to me. So there's that possibility, but what we really can do here, we must think about this topic and discuss possible ways forward. And the biggest ones is regulation and monetarization in some way, shape, or form. That would really result in the public and private sector coming together in this way to first accept that it's a real thing and then come together in a productive way in trying to stop something catastrophic from happening. So enjoy your phones, enjoy your Amazon Alexas, but I want us to keep this in mind. Thank you so much.